Hey guys, this is Calvin from Agran Performance, and today I'm going to have a little bit of a different episode. Instead of just showing off a dunk session and some training, I'm going to talk about something that I've been dealing with during the month of January, and something that I know a lot of jumpers deal with, and this is knee pain. Today I'm going to specifically be talking about patellar tendinopathy, and I'll put a diagram up to see so you can see what I'm talking about. So if you have something like another common knee pain source is patellofemoral pain, the stuff I'm talking about here, some of it will apply, but not all of it. But I do think you can definitely use this same protocol for Achilles tendinopathy or quad tendinopathy. I've even used it for my peroneal tendon, which is on like the outer edge of your ankle. So last month I got my new gym membership to a lifetime gym. This is the first time I've been paying for like an indoor gym membership, so I think I just really wanted to use it as much as possible, and I definitely overjumped. I had a couple weeks of jumping twice a week. I was writing some of my own programming and it just kept kind of tilting towards overjumping. And one thing I've definitely learned about tendons, and this is from people like Isaiah Rivera, Jake Tura, are two people I really like the information they've put out. Tendons hate big spikes in volume. So if you take a big time off from jumping and then you come back and have a long jump session, pretty often you're going to get a big tendon flare up. Whereas if you were to build that up slowly over time, even if you have an unhealthy tendon, you could probably avoid pain. Patellar tendinopathy, also sometimes called jumper's knee, is pretty simple. It's just an overuse injury. It happens when your tendon gets more load than it can handle, and then instead of going through the proper recovery process, it starts to break down. There can, even if you were to get your tendon ultrasounded, which I've done before, or an MRI imaging of it, you'll see there's teeny tiny little holes in your tendon. And the key difference between this and, let's say, like a muscle pull or bone injury, something like that, it's not just inflammation. It's a structural issue that builds up over time, and you can't just use that classic, what your doctor tells you to do, which is rest, ice, and elevate. It will go away, but then it's going to come back as soon as you jump again. In order to get your tendon back to full strength, you need to load it. So that begs the question, how do we load a tendon? In general, your tendon, when it's flared up, is going to like slower strength movements. So this is 3 times speed, but this is me doing really slow, like 4 second down, pause for 2 seconds, 4 second up squats. My quad always responds really well to this. Another thing that you can do multiple times a day, which I'll put a picture of. I didn't have a video of me doing it, but that's a leg extension iso. You can see the diagram right there. And then just in general, you can't stop training, right? You got to train around it. So this right here, RDL, great lower body strength movement, not going to flare up my tendon at all because it's pretty slow and controlled and you're not really bending your knees very much. And then it's just about kind of building back into the faster things. So at first I cut out everything that was hurting, and palate cleans were one of those things. As this is kind of like a week and a half later, 2 weeks later, once I started feeling a little better, my tendon pain was at just a 1 out of 10. I warmed up pretty well for these. I had lost some strength. You'll see later in the video here, I fail like 225, which usually I'm able to get pretty handily. But still, this was something I was starting to build back in right as my tendon was feeling better. Once you're able to power clean, maybe sprint at like 80% effort without pain, it's good to start building in things like depth drops. I don't have any videos of that, but that's just me dropping from a box. And then this was kind of the week after. This was my first quote-unquote jump session back. Just getting some standing jumps, making sure that I don't have pain, especially the next day. You'll see some sprints. I'm a little limited by space right now, and this is me intentionally kind of cutting the intensity, going like 65-70%, because sprinting is pretty provocative for a tendon, but I think it's a good thing to keep in. Pretty good rule of thumb is if it hurts in the moment or if it flares up your pain the next day, cut it out for a bit and then progress back into it slowly. While I was progressing back, I had a lot less time to jump, so I was working on some new stuff. This is a little juggling trick I learned, throwing it behind my back and then going over the top like that. It's called tennis because it kind of looks like you're playing tennis with yourself. Then in a few seconds here, we're going to get back into some dunk sessions. These were one of these. This one where I'm in the black shorts was kind of right before my flare-up. This was like the session that flared me up. A lot of jumping off one foot. I think that was part of it. I was working on off the backboard off one foot, which I had never hit before on 10. And it was my second jump session that week. Like I said, I was just gravitating towards jumping a little bit too much. And then this was kind of my first session after the fact. I barely jumped off one. These were like my only 2 jumps off one. Mostly just was doing off vert and some light 2-foot stuff. But I did get a couple nice jumps off 1 foot, just trying to keep it under a 1 out of 10 pain. All right. That's it. Thanks for watching, and I'm going to put that little protocol back up on the screen if you want to screenshot it.